Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
InSights. I'm your host Raju Mandhyan. Here at ExPat InSights, we take external views of internal successes by foreigners, expats and immigrants who have made Philippines their home and are doing good in the Philippines either in business or society. This morning on ExPat InSights, we have taken up a subject matter which is very pleasant, very close to my heart, the subject matter of education and social innovation. And for this subject matter, I have two guests, and these guests are not really 100% expats, but they are global leaders. One of them who is, you probably know him, you've seen him on the show before twice, Mr. Greg Forbes, life coach, results coach from Purposeful Stewardship Institute, who has been in this country since 1981 and is husband to a Filipino wife and loves the subject matter of education also. Incidentally, he was our very first guest at ExPat InSights, and I'd like to welcome Mr. Greg Forbes back to ExPat InSights.
Okay, thanks, Raju.
Hey, so Greg, this morning, well, thank you for coming back. You know, you come here. I think I should depend on you to come in for every subject matter. You're such a master.
Oh, thank you.
So today, Greg, I want to talk about education, learning, schooling. Call it what you want, no? And since that's your life's passion also, do you want to help me out with this?
Okay, well, I sometimes talk with the academic people saying that I'm a graduate of the School of Hard Knocks, so not really going in on the academic side, but
yeah.
Looking at, but I also, my higher degree also is in adult education.
Right.
Which is more, and I focus more on the experiential side of that.
Yeah.
In my seminars, I sometimes jokingly say, you know, people are like tea bags, cha.
Yeah.
And they say, how? Well, you discover their flavor by putting them in hot water.
Yeah.
So put them in the action and draw out the learning. And the word draw out refers back to the one we were trying to pronounce earlier, educare. Educare.
What is that?
Which is Latin for the origin for the word education, is based on that Latin word. And see, we've, in the Western world and even in the Philippines, look at education on the formal side as students being empty vessels that are filled up by the teacher, by the subject matter. And in this experiential training that we do, we have a totally different philosophy. And the philosophy is, God has given us everything, or as human beings, inherently, we have what's needed to be success.
I like that
to
word.
Be successful.
I like that word, yeah.
And so the purpose of educare is to draw out from the people what needs to be expressed or manifest for them to have success. And so I go more with that side.
I like that. Educare, I like that fact that it's inherent, and I like the fact that it's gifted.
Yes.
It's a gift from above, no? Greg, I have been not fair on you. I've had you on the show, and I have been probing you and picking your brain so often. Before I even probe education further, you keep mentioning that this is what you do. I want to know a bit more about what you do and what you have been doing. I know you run Chalice, and I also know that you are PSI coach. What exactly have you been doing? I mean, how have you been putting people in hot water? So describe that, then we'll come back to education, because I've not been fair on you in the last two episodes.
Well, Chalice is a small Canadian organization that raises funds from individual Canadians for sponsoring children for education. And we have local partners who run the programs for us. We provide the funds. My job with Chalice is to help them organize in a more effective way and to also audit their projects. We're responsible to the Canadian organization and eventually to the Canadian government that the money is going where it really should go. So we have in the neighborhood of more than 5,000 children in different areas of the Philippines. So that's my day job.
Yeah. So can my audience probably visit or know where these, are there physical places where you teach this, where Charles is helping out? Is there schools? Is there any specific thing that they say, hey, we saw that place?
We're helping with the funds for the education, but we're not running the education. In some areas, like we have a project in the mountains of North Cotabato. Mm-hmm. Our partner there is the Oblates, and it's a religious order, and they specialize in education programs. And so they have an elementary school there, way up in the mountains. So that's one. I work through a diocesan priest in Bulacan, who has orphanages and schools. And then in Tarlac, in Capas Tarlac, the sponsored children go to the public school system.
That's one aspect of what you do with
Right.
Charlie's, no?
Yeah.
And you being the results coach with PSI.
Okay, PSI runs public seminars, so people from all walks of life will pay a fee to attend the seminar. And the modules are designed in such a way that it's very interactive. And by doing something, by doing an exercise, people will then discover how they react. Okay, in a certain situation, they react a certain way, and so we stop and reflect, why did I do that? Why did I think that way? And one of the ones that we discussed in an earlier program, I think, with you was...
Win-win.
Well, win-win, but before that was how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah, that was your very first statement on this channel, yeah?
And so what that means is, in this simulated situation in the seminar, chances are how you reacted in there is how you're reacting out there in life. And if you're not having the kind of success you want in life, then in the seminar you'll discover why.
Wow, wow. So this is where the school of hard knocks comes in.
Right.
Because you create life, the school of hard knocks. That's what you do, no, at PSI. No? So now you've trained a lot of people, and education is your fore, it's your thrust. No? How has this been? How have they been impacted, the people who have walked through your real life workshops? Can you cite an example of somebody having emancipated, have come from darkness to light, educare, you know? Can you cite an example?
Well, I don't have permission to give specific people, but there's one who's quite a famous Philippine TV personality.
Right.
And since I don't have his permission, I won't say who it is, but he's quite well known. He's an environmentalist. You'll get the hint from that. But he took one of our upper level seminars in the 1990s, and he was following his father into a political career. And he saw things in that career that didn't conform to his sense of integrity. And so he shifted. And to this day, he's shared with some people that he thanks our seminar for allowing him to make that shift.
To become a brand new man.
Right.
To become a brand new person. No? So now, structured education, institutionalized education, and real life, and you're bringing this together. No? How do you suppose, what are your ideas on the structured learning to become more real life in this country? Or here, wherever your influence is around, no? Wherever PSI and you together influence. What are your ideas on how industries and educational institutions should create more reality?
You know, in being involved in this industry, even since the 1990s, one of the biggest obstacles I've found, both here and in Canada and the
also
US,
the rest of the world, probably.
and the rest of the world,
yeah,
is they refer to this, things like communication building and esteem building and sense of personal value. They call that soft. That's soft education. And things like, and I don't want to...
Engineering, using a sense...
Engineering and computer studies and accounting and those things, which are vital, but they call that hard. Now, during difficult times in the economy, the soft goes out the window and the hard remains because I guess it's more measurable, it's closer to bottom line. But my opinion and my philosophy, which I try to talk with CEOs and people who have the budgets to support this, is no matter how good your technical knowledge is, if you cannot communicate it, and if you cannot relate either with your customer or your fellow worker, you will be throwing money because it will not be getting the results you want. People run on their fears. They run on their, they have inabilities to communicate what they really want. And so I think that fundamentally we should be helping people to express themselves, to draw out from themselves the talents and abilities they have so that they're more secure and more confident. In all the years I've worked in different countries and different institutions, the most difficult person to work with and have success with is someone who feels insecure in themselves.
I don't know if you know a gentleman called Sir Ken Robinson. He's a Nobel Prize nominee.
Yes, yeah.
And he's an educator, and he also talks about how the whole system, the existing system of education, needs to be revamped because it has been around for 300 or 400 years.
Yes.
And many of the elements of this educational system are based on the fact that people need to carry a sickle and a fork and go to work in a factory. Up until date, many of those concepts are applied. That's why I think those are considered useful learnings rather than the ones that you're mentioning, the one of dealing with others. Now, so you're differentiating hard and soft. And the hard one, which people consider practical, has been around for the longest time. What are your ideas on this culture, this country, our audience? If somebody in power listens to this, how do they go to people who need this education and bring this to fore? What are your recommendations on making this available to the country?
I would like to either start an institution or else involve in the higher levels of institutions, some of the more exclusive schools as well as the higher education, more of the what's called soft skills training, because the Philippine culture is very credential oriented, and very much like Canada. Canada is a very credential oriented society also. They look at your paper first. One of the things I admire about the U.S. is they're a little more risk-oriented and never mind your credentials. If you can do the job, do the job. In the Philippines, I would like to see more of the esteem building and confidence in the self rather than the institution. The institutions are good. The formal education is still very, very left brain.
That's a little bit of for me. I mean, how do I then know that somebody can do or fulfill a project or has the capability to do it if I don't look at his credentials? How do I hire? How do I recruit? I mean, I can't recruit on the fact that he claims he can do it.
Of course, there has to be a certain amount of basic credential and so on. Especially when you're talking about things like engineering and accounting and so on. But I've noticed, I haven't been on the job market for a long time. When I was in Canada, I was always on the internet looking for job opportunities and seeing that. But recently I've gone back just to see what's happening. And the advice that's being given, for example, for job interviews and so on, is actually giving more advice on how to express yourself and communicate. And they sort of take it for granted that you already have the credential. And so we have to move to a new level. If you have the credential, there's no guarantee. And in this world, and your next interview is going to, he will really emphasize this very much, is that the credential now is a new starting point. Before, in my generation, when you have the credential, you're guaranteed a job.
Right.
And now it's showing, because of changing technology and everything that's happening, that's a starting point, and there's no guarantee it prepares you to have success in the world. In Canada itself, there are degree holders driving taxi cabs, doing janitorial work, and it's because they haven't learned outside of that credential.
So in essence, you're saying, the conclusion on the table looks as if, right, there's schools, there's colleges, there's structured education, including the discussion of hard knocks. success can come from anywhere, growth can come from anywhere, no?
Yes.
So somehow, how do I grow? I mean, where do I go then? Do I just trust myself, or do I go and throw myself into the pit, or do I teach others to get into the pit so that they can discover their skills, their capabilities?
Again,
I need a how.
Yeah.
I need an answer to how do we go about it.
I think the higher level education system, both, and not just in the Philippines, everywhere in the world, they need to open up more to this kind of philosophy. And Massachusetts Institute of Technology is doing
MIT?
a lot of that. MIT,
Yeah.
with their systems thinking approach. They've been here to the Philippines and making connections here. Innovation is really it, to be able to think on your feet. Now, I'm not, by any stretch of the imagination, I'm not putting down higher education. In fact, all the more so, you need that as a starting point. You need to have a certain amount of abilities, technical abilities, reading abilities, and mathematical abilities, because the world is becoming, technology is making the world change faster, but also at a higher level of thinking. And who was it? Einstein, oh no, one of the famous brainy people
Well, some wise man.
is saying that the solution to today's problems are not arrived
At the same level of
of
thinking.
thinking where the
Einstein.
problems were
Einstein.
created.
Yeah.
And I think that's all, the technology is really proving that and challenging that we have to think at a new level.
So you're saying we need to take another look.
Oh, yes.
Every now and then we need to take another look at the system, at our approach, at the programs that exist within us. No?
Yeah.
So two questions for you, Mr. Forbes. One, how are you doing yourself? Where do you end up on this journey of learning more and growing more? No? Where do you see yourself personally, and where do you see society? Those are the two questions. I mean, if we take into account what you're saying, or if we really value education as much as it should be, where do we go, individually and as a community?
Well,
Where are you going?
where am I going? That's a good question. At this stage and at this age, a lot of people my age are already retired and
Yeah.
fishing and traveling and things like that.
That means they stop educating.
Yeah, and I think I would deteriorate if I had to do that. And it may be fortunate that at this stage, I'm not really financially independent, but I never, that's not what I strive for.
Mm-hmm.
And even when my own children ask, what's your advice about education? Find something you're good at. Discover your talent, and if you share with the world that talent, the money will come to you, the source of living. And so I believe the fulfillment, as I progressed in this kind of teaching and this kind of world, what I've found is my life did not become easier. But it becomes so much more fulfilling and so joy-filled to know that, to have the opportunity to share what I have. And where I'm going from here is I want to create more people who will take on teaching and sharing of their knowledge and ability, so that that spreads. And because as you get older, you don't appeal as much to other people, so you need someone to take over the teacher's role.
I see. So let me paraphrase that. So you're saying that you'll keep on going.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be measured in material numbers.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. And you want to do this more. You don't want to just fade out and die. You want it. You want to go out in a blast. If you do go out. All right, Sir Forbes. Thank you very much for those beautiful insights. No? And I'd really like you to stay and watch. And there's this young gentleman who's coming up. Really good, handsome gentleman, and he's really taken this out into the world and using technology, and he's a balikbayan. He's not really an expat, but he's a balikbayan. He's almost like a foreigner in this country, though. So thank you very much for being on ExPat InSights, and God bless you, Mr. Forbes.
Thank you.
That was Greg Forbes, results coach, life coach from Purposeful Stewardship Institute. We'll take a little break, and we'll come back and talk to Paul Rivera of Caliber, the CEO of Caliber, who is educating a lot of young ones into growth and into success. Stay watching. This is ExPat InSights.